Today on Parts Hold, we've got a great show for you. We are going to talk about staffing your parts department. Cliff's got some great ideas, a couple of guidelines. You're going to want to write some of these numbers down. If you're looking to build or grow your parts department, you'll know when to add staff and when not to. We're also going to talk about, some of the fanfare that Cliff's getting while he's out in the field. Some of it's amazing, some of it's super disturbing. And then we're going to share a little bit of our new swag with you. You guys are going to get to see that. We're going to talk about that, facial hair, and much, much more coming up today on Parts Hold. How are you today, Cliff?
I'm groovy. I've got my brand new Parts Hold swag going on. I'm repping the product, repping the brand. People are in love with it. They see the shirt and they ask me when I was in the grocery store today.
I'm repping the hat, of course, and then we've got I think they call this a lanyard. It says Parts Hold, and just in case that's not enough, just in case I have an idea, I can write it down with my Parts Hold pen on my Parts Hold Post-it.
Oh, I like the Post-it because true parts guys write it down on their hand.
Yeah, so I can write it down my hand. And then I don't think that I have quite the pecs that you do, but I've got a t-shirt here. So I'm pretty excited about all this swag here. We've done our first send out of swag to previous guests, which reminds me I have to get some stuff for your brother.
Yes, you will have to get that to him. Yeah, he would love that.
We'll ship him the Parts Hold beard oil.
Certainly could use that. Speaking of beards, it appears that you have something on your face, but maybe it's just the camera.
This is my new Parts Hold beard.
Are you going to grow it out? Like long?
I've always been facially hair challenged, and this is really we're going on a week, and within that week, there are hours per day that I spend concentrating on growing the beard, and this is the best I can give you so far.
Are you doing like meditation for growth? Is that what we're saying?
I try to grow it that way. No, you're not buying my techniques yet.
Well, no, I mean I like the methodology there.
It's like that. That's my beard push face.
Your beard push face. Now, do you do this just randomly times, like even in conversations, or are you specifically going to be alone for a moment to push?
I don't usually do it in public, but I do wonder if maybe there's a little bit of an effectiveness, just because the beard at the end of the day, like if it could be getting performance anxiety, just out of like it's the only thing I'm thinking about, and maybe if I did it while I was having conversations, it could work out better. So I'm willing to test the theory.
I would test it on the elevator. Just, make that Parts Hold push beard face in the elevator. As long as there are other people in the elevator with you, it could give you some super uncomfortable moments.
Oh, there is no doubt that people did not know what I was doing.
Yeah.
So that's pretty funny.
Well, I thought maybe you were growing it out for me to try to compete.
Well, I do there's a thing going on here. I guess I should give some backstory to the beard. So Cliff was in a store a couple of weeks ago, and I get a text from the owner of the store, and he's amazing. They've been clients for years, and he's just he's one of those people that he's an amazing human being. But I think the thing that probably makes him, even ultra amazing would be he's got a phenomenal sense of humor, right? So he texts me, and it's Cliff's first time going to this store. Coach Vicky has been their coach for a really, really long time, and actually we're having a lot of success where Cliff has been going into the stores, and he's focusing on the parts room, and then the coach, that's been working with that store is going in, and they're working on the service side, and it's really just kind of it's almost not even fair, but I get a text from the owner, and it's like, hey, this Cliff guy seems really nice, but I just need to let you know he's a fake. And I'm like, what? A fake? He's like the most honest man I know. So I fall right into his trap. And then he sends me this thing. He says, he's too good looking to have ever been in the parts department.
which is not fair because there's some really good looking parts guys out there.
For sure. I mean, it's just one of those things where they just haven't, they're unsung, right? So for all you good looking parts people out there, Cliff is just one of you. So they really took it to the next level, didn't they, Cliff? So what pray tell happened in the days following that text message that I got?
Well, I was asked a day later to take a picture by their marketing team, and they just told me that they wanted me to take a picture by the white wall. I felt like it was something that was super common that they did with everyone who came in. And so they took this picture, and a day later,
less than 24 hours, wasn't it?
Yes, they had at least a 5 foot tall poster of me made.
Yeah, it reminded me of like those fat head things that you would get of, Patrick Mahomes, but it was Cliff. And it was a great picture. However, not even close to the most disturbing thing that they created, right?
Yes, I have my own action figures.
They have a Cliff Honeycutt parts hold action figure.
In this action figure, I've got some guns. I'm freaking ripped.
You're a fine specimen of a man. And you're wearing go-go boots, but it still looks manly at the same time. It's super interesting.
I would say that takes away just a hair, but they somehow fit the outfit. And there was like a firefighter version too.
I
maybe
didn't see that.
Else. Yeah, there was several of them. It was uncomfortable for me.
I can only imagine.
That doesn't go into the most uncomfortable portion of it.
Okay, I'm ready.
That poster was hung in this owner's office unbeknownst to him. So it was all a setup for him because he made such a big deal and a big joke about it that they stuck this poster in his office when he was out of town.
And where do you think that poster is right now?
Maybe with this collection of fine automobiles that he has, because he has some really, really sweet cars.
So if you guys make comments on the YouTube, or if you guys want to call in and ask questions for Parts Hold, the phone number, believe it or not, it's very similar to the SDR phone number. So it's 83333 ask SDR. And we would be happy to field any questions you guys have. We actually also have our Facebook group, the Parts Hold Facebook group, where we're just trying to listen to you and give you guys the best content possible. So don't be shy, and we're here to help, and we want to provide some value to the marketplace. And I think today's topic really is kind of going along with that. Cliff's going to talk today about how do you staff your parts department? And there's a few different ways to ask this question. And I think we'll probably get into a little bit of how many do you need will be that conversation. But Cliff's got a really unique way of how he kind of plans for staffing, because at the end of the day, the one thing we don't want to do is we don't want to throw people at problems, but we want to be really strategic and scale and grow with intention so that our parts department always stays healthy. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Coach Cliff to get us started here.
You made a great point there in saying that sometimes we throw people at problems and we just want to hire more people and not fix the other things. But I want to talk about a couple different scenarios. First of which is, when do I hire people and who am I hiring? So that's kind of a twofold thing there. I look at a couple different scenarios. Number one, there are some very, very talented parts counter people out there, parts managers, system managers that have been in the business a really, really long time. And I think about the guys that you could hand them a bolt and they could go to a bolt bin and instantly match it up. I think about the guys that can go to the shelf if you asked for a particular item and they just know exactly where it's at. I'm sure you've seen those people too in your career.
I worked with a parts guy. His name was Leslie. He's one of the most amazing minds that that I've seen, but he actually, not only could he had part numbers memorized, but if he knew the model of the car and a little bit of information, he could predict what the part number would be. Like he'd been with the manufacturer so long that he figured out their cadence of how they assign a part number to something, which I don't have any idea how they come up with part numbers, but he had it all figured out. And he could almost guess a part number just based on the year and model of a car, which I thought was absolutely fascinating.
So I know a couple that are the same way that they can do that. So one of the things that I'm looking at when I'm staffing at it is I need to have some guys that have some longevity and some ability behind them in the same way, whether they're memorizing part numbers, whether they can learn the cadence, whether they just have the knowledge of some of the older product. That is one of the most valuable things in my mind. There's a couple of different brands that come to mind. I remember one time we had a guy local that was very well known across 2 states as the guy to contact for a particular brand. And he had calls from all over the place before we really had, DoorDash and those sorts of things and Uber. He was shipping pages of UPS. I think about that when you're staffing it, like you need some guys that are super talented, that have some tenure behind them and are mature in the business, I guess I would call it too.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask is like when you're looking at, let's just say counterman, just starting with that conversation, are you looking for a seasoned person? Are you looking for someone that's young and good with computers?
Well, I think when you're staffing your parts department, you've got to look at it both ways. One, I've got to look at some guys that have some tenure, have some years behind them, have some seniority, some maturity, if you would call it that. But I'm looking at some guys that I can build a foundation for that can help my other guys. If we're honest, there's very few people that are coming into this business in their early, late teens, early 20s that understand the difference between metric and standard. They normally can't cross those things over. If you were to go ask them about, something like a caliber slide, they wouldn't know what you were talking about. However, I think that those people have a special place too, because as time goes on, all these vehicles are becoming more and more, the technology is getting more and more heavy. And so we need some of these younger guys that are really, really good with computers, really good with that technology that can help support those guys that have been seasoned and maybe aren't as good with technology. And so you have a great balance. I kind of think of it as a apprentice kind of deal, where I've got one guy learning from the other about the history and the real quality behind a real parts guy.
Well, I think that's probably really at the crux of it is if you're building a parts room from scratch, this is easy to do, but maybe not so much when you're building it on the fly as you're running your business, is that I think the natural cadence, if we could all plan it and build it, would be that the young guys, and maybe they're really good at technology, like I'm bringing them in for inventory control and working on stock and, the orders before they even get to the counter. There's like a little bit of a cutting your teeth thing. And maybe you're using the technology with the guns and all the stuff that they have for inventory. And then they get that before they even get on the counter. But I think that's a perfect world, and that's not always how we are. But I think you make a really strong case that a strong counterman or counter person that's been doing it for 20 years, they've got the same kind of value of as a really, really good technician.
Absolutely.
Because there's not a ton of them out there, and they are so valuable because at the end of the day, what a really, really good parts counter person does is they save time, and that's one of our commodities in parts and service is that you can't get that time back. And if you're really efficient at trying to retrieve and look up parts, that's solid.
I think about the guys that I've been with throughout my career, some super talented guys that mentored me, and I'm so thankful for their leadership and their guidance in my career.
Did they have an action figure?
They did not have an action figure, which folks, they should be in the stores and on the shelf by Christmas. You can pick them up for your Christmas presents and Christmas parties.
Yeah, and instead of being made by Hasbro, they're made by Hasbro.
It's BRO. Yeah, I like that. But I'm super thankful for the guys and the influence that I've had in my life from some of the senior guys that I grew up under. But those guys, the lessons that they've learned and the knowledge that they've gained is not something that you get by in a book. You're not going to pick that up and read that in a book. You're not going to go sit in some random training and get that. This is life lessons that picked up the hard way, and they found out, and it's the knowledge there that they can pass on to the younger generation. Again, I think of it the way growing up into it, coming in to the business as an 18-year-old and starting out, those guys are the ones that helped me build my career. It's those. So I'm looking for that team to build around me to build up those younger guys. And I do agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that their value is as important as a technician because they can help you pick up the other items that I'm going to need.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk. That's all great. I love everything about that. Let's talk about the math really quickly. How do you figure out how many counter people you need? When you're a manager, at what point do you need an assistant manager? Wholesale, how do you figure out your needs for wholesale? Let's talk about the math for a little bit.
Yeah, $35,000 to $40,000 is where I want to kind of stay in sales when I'm looking to add a counter person.
So if I've got 160,000, is it sales or gross?
I'm specifically right now, I'm talking about sales.
So if I've got $170,000 or $160,000 in part sales, then I need 4 counter people.
That's kind of the math that you want to stay around. Yes.
Okay.
That's what I found to be the best when I'm staffing a parts department. And you talked about kind of the management. I want to kind of keep my manager managing 5 to 6 people.
Okay, that's a really good number. So if you have 12 people in the department, then you need a manager and assistant manager.
That's right.
Okay, and then how would you divvy up the responsibilities between manager and assistant manager?
Some of the frontline stuff I would probably divvy out to my assistant manager. Looking back again, in my experience, I found it best that some of the tasks throughout the day, I would divvy that up to the assistant manager, more of the inventory control and that sort of thing. I'm leaving that on the manager themselves.
At the end of the day, the idea should be is that, you want to identify really early on, because I think that when you're talking about getting an assistant parts manager, for sure, that's a promote from within kind of job. So you've got to have enough counter people to where you have a little bit of a pool to pick from. And then, at the end of the day, there should be a line from assistant manager to manager too. But the tough part about that is that, parts managers are super reliable and they stick at their jobs for a really, really long time. So sometimes you got to wait in the wings for a minute. That's probably really hard for assistant managers.
One of the several parts managers that I'm thinking of off the top of my head right now that I know have developed a team that have come behind them, and they've become the counter person from a shipping and receiving clerk. Then they became a counter person. Then they went from a counter person to the assistant manager. And then this particular couple of guys I'm thinking of have moved those on to other individuals because some of the local dealerships, that guy's been there, much like you say, he's been there so long that they're calling him and they're asking him if he has any talent. So that talent, he's growing and making his own thing. It's almost like a sports team, to be honest with you, where you have a head coach that was so talented that he kept growing his team, and now they've become head coaches elsewhere and are competing in a lot of cases. So I think that's one of the really, really cool things that you see from some of the guys that have been in the business a really, really long time, that they just give back to it because they love this business that we're in.
Yeah, that's something we need to kind of keep going too. So I really dig that. Tell me about wholesale staffing.
Yeah, so the wholesale staffing is a little bit tricky too, because there's so many programs now where someone can do everything from one computer. I don't need quite the staff that we used to need. So, that number is going to grow. I would probably on a wholesale front, at least double that 40 grand, before I would go add in staff.
Oh yeah. Because the margins are so small.
The margins are super, super small. Again, you can do everything from one system. There's not multiple things there. I would probably say you're going to have to go 80, 85, even 100, in a lot of cases because it's a little bit simpler to do that wholesale number. And most of your large wholesalers have someone pulling those orders for them. So they're just taking and filling those orders. They're not pulling those orders from the warehouse.
Okay, that makes sense. So you got people pulling double duty on the shelves.
Right. I've got that that wholesale clerk or wholesale counter person doing just wholesale. They're just answering phones, fulfilling orders off the computer, looking stuff up, and that sort of thing, pulling orders in the warehouse. They're not loading the trucks for delivery. You've kind of got a strategy. We could probably do a whole episode on setting up a wholesale strategy. That would probably be a great episode to talk about.
Yeah, we'll put that in the suggestion box for sure. But 70 to 80,000 in wholesale is when you're thinking about. So if I've got one person back there, we need to generate 80 grand.
Right, because I mean, if you think about it, my counter people are probably generating between 12 to 14 on that 35 to 40 scenario.
Oh, you're talking about gross to sales?
That's gross to sales. Yeah, you're really going to have to at least double that because the margins are really, really slim on wholesale.
For sure, yeah. I mean, if you're 15-20% on wholesale, you're a rock star. So
yeah, you're probably doing a great job for sure.
Hope that gives you guys a little bit of an idea, some rules of thumb to work with, and just understanding. This kind of leads us into that discussion about not only what do we have when we're, what do we need in terms of revenue to staff something, but it also kind of opens up that discussion about minimum standards of expectation. And at the end of the day, the counter people should be generating more parts revenue because we can get really, really good at how we're filling orders and making suggestions for ancillary parts and some of the other things we've talked about. But really think about that when you've got a head count and what are you getting per person that's in the department. And there's a lot of guidelines that are out there that can really help you out. I know that Cliff and I have talked several times about the NADA guidelines, and we really appreciate at least having something to go off of. So that'll do it for today's episode of Parts Hold.
Here to fill the order.